Bandwidth for this podcast is brought to you by Ideate Software. Be sure to check out all of their great Revit applications designed to increase your productivity. BIMThoughts. So we had the big AU.
We did, or the little AU.
The little AU.
Well, I think it was kind of little, yeah.
Yeah, with the California Adventure logo. See, I went there.
You went there.
So what was with everything's forged this year at the AU? Seems like
a lot of forge and a lot of generative design.
A lot of forge, a lot of generative design, yeah.
But it wasn't necessarily like, look, generative design is easy. Anyone can do it. That's not the impression I got.
Right. I didn't get that impression either.
It's still very, very high level. No. That generative design button, it's a little bit misleading.
Yeah.
It's like, look, you can do generative design. Just click this button.
Yeah. And no, you can't.
Well, you can. People do. People do. Right?
People do.
It's
well, I hope
being
so.
Done.
Somebody's doing it.
People are doing it, right? You know, I mean, there's so many programs and like startup companies even around this space, right?
You know, a company needs to do a demo of generative design, a webinar, if you will, from nothing to generative design. So how to do it from start to finish, so that we can all see really what's going on with it. Because we all see the demos and we think, yeah, that's great, we got to do that. And then you start thinking about it and you're like, oh, okay, I got to go to Dynamo and do that. Well, I got to make this whole thing programmable and movable in Dynamo in order to work. Maybe. I don't know. I've never gotten that far. But it would be nice if somebody had a webinar, Anthony, that showed it from beginning to end. Here's how you do it. We're going to spend the next 3 hours, 2 hours, 30 minutes, whatever it takes.
Well, I think one of the really interesting things around the generative design space is Autodesk taking on SpaceMaker. SpaceMaker,
yes. And we have the SpaceMaker guy on.
Yeah. If you didn't listen, make sure you guys go back, listen to the SpaceMaker podcast. Super interesting. And as we spoke with Havard about SpaceMaker, I think it's all about informing the design, informing the architect, the engineer, the planner, the developer, giving them information, whatever that might be.
It's another tool in your toolbox.
Right. I think that where people are getting confused with generative design is they think that, oh my gosh, my job is going to be lost. You know, it's going to take my job for me. Generative design is just going to be the new architect and engineer, right? But I don't think that's it. I think that it's giving us the tool, just another tool to make better designs as architects and engineers, right? We still have to be the people that go in there and say, these are the metrics, these are the points that we want to hit. This is, what we need to comply with in terms of the property line or the building height or, whatever the restrictions may be. And, we interface with whatever generative design program or application you may be using to get this data, to make these decisions in a much robust way.
Well, and I think that's part of the problem. When we started discussing this and we're saying, Autodesk has the generative design button, but it's not as simple as that. It's Dynamo behind it that actually runs all of the algorithms and the stuff to make it happen. But I think the problem is that they have a generative design button. So people are expecting something from the generative design button as opposed to the process, the Dynamo behind it that makes it happen. The same way, HiPar or SpaceMaker or TestFit or all those other programs that help you with a generative design or iterative design or optioneering, these different processes of seeing lots of things at once. But we get so bogged down with generative design, the term, that gets us all sort of focusing on one thing instead of the actual topic. That's just my 3.5 cents.
So generative design, we need to know more about it. Or I'm sorry, we don't need to know more about it. We need to know how to do it. We need to see it from the start to finish so that we can take this fear, uncertainty, and doubt of generative design away. And too bad we can't go somewhere to learn about it. Maybe soon. Because the problem with webinars is nobody's going to watch it.
Well, that's definitely an issue. I will say I definitely like the platform this year better than last year.
Yeah.
Right? Where like they expected you to listen to the recording prior to the session. Do you remember that? Where you basically showed up to the AU session and they're like, all right, what do you think? And you're like, what do you mean?
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah, they
thought we were
weren't
going to
live.
watch it. They weren't live. Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
so this, at least, they recorded it far in advance still, but they showed it and then they had a Q&A afterwards, which I think was a better platform to set up, much more like being in person, kind of what you would expect from a conference. But no, I think that the problem with generative design is that there isn't one path. There isn't one process. There's not one solution. There's not one question. There's not one iteration. Right. There's so many different ways to approach generative design and so many ways to apply it that you almost get lost in the methodology. It's kind of in the same way where we have tons of different computational tools and they're growing, right? Of course, I do a lot with Dynamo, but in the geometry and early design side of things, I would definitely say that there's more of a presence in the industry with Rhino and Rhino Inside, with Grasshopper, and other things because the geometry tools are much more robust. So, you still do it in the, stepping back to computational design, you have a bunch of different applications where you have this balance between the programs, and what program would be best for, what it is that you're trying to solve. I think with generative design, that is almost kind of exploded in a sense to where not only do you have all of these individual companies, Hypar and others, that are kind of going about this process and some getting consumed by Autodesk, right? But, then you also have different ways of approaching it through Rhino and Dynamo and, all of these other different applications. So it's not just one answer. I would love for Anthony to show us the start to finish through Hypar. But that's not to say that, there's not a wonderful start to finish that Hassan could show us through Rhino Inside, or Marcelo could show us through Rhino Inside. And, that we could have John Pearson or Kyle Martin show us through Dynamo and even the generative design button, different people through that. But it's not just one answer.
No, it isn't. Do you think that more people are using it inside of Rhino because Rhino's what they're teaching in school and they're giving it to the young kids to do because they seem to be the computer savvy people?
I think it's partially that, and this is coming from the girl that loves Dynamo, that's no question, right?
Uh-huh.
I think that Rhino handles geometry better.
Oh, interesting. Because I know we're doing a big push to move from SketchUp to Rhino right now.
Why not FormIt? Because people in your office know Rhino, right?
Because people in our office know Rhino.
Nobody
because when we
knows
asked
FormIt.
everybody what should we use instead of SketchUp, I don't think one person said FormIt.
However, what the product team is doing with FormIt, and especially with Dynamo, is really remarkable.
It is remarkable, but it isn't as deep as Rhino.
What are your thoughts on FormIt, Carl? Have you played with it at all?
I have. I used to play with it a lot, and then they made FormIt Pro part of the package, the collection of suites. And as a developer, we didn't have access to the collection. You got individual products, and FormIt is not an individual product. So you can access the online version And the online version, which I found out when we talked with Heather a few months back, that you can access all the plugins, all the JavaScript plugins through the online version, which I was not aware of.
Well, and I think that's kind of where we're going also. And I think that even Autodesk is kind of accepting the fact that we use many applications, even ones outside of Autodesk. I think that they've been super receptive to Rhino inside Revit, or Rhino inside just in general. And the fact that, it's going to take a handful or a package of programs to accomplish a lot of the time what we need, right? Whether that's, exporting out to create 3D prints or to create some sort of virtual reality experience for coordination, clash coordination, generative design studies, all of manufacturing processes, these types of things, not all of the time can be done easily within Revit. And once again, we have to remember that balance between what program is best for the application or the tool at hand, the problem at hand, and what program are we good at, right? I probably wouldn't use Rhino to create a mass because I'm familiar with the conceptual massing tools in Revit, right? So, those types of things really do need to be taken into consideration when we're thinking about software and purchasing software and having a robust library of applications that we have for our staff, whether that's because we just hired someone that's super familiar with Rhino or because the staff wants to try out FormIt and Dynamo, whatever it might be.
I think that's right. And to bring this full circle back to our friends at Autodesk University 2021 and the fact that it seemed to be the year of Forge,
Yes.
Forge uses that same platform, that there is a credit system involved for using the power behind Forge as the handshake between your product and your other API. So again, we're back to a credit system to run your functionality, which is great for a small person or a small shop, or if you're using some of the included things. So for example, if you're using the Revit API through Forge, you've already paid for Revit, so that there's no extra charge for that. But if you're using the Forge to create your own 3D viewer online, well, there's a price to the computational power, because the computers in the cloud don't come for free. And that's the extent of my Forge knowledge.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that. Pay by the credit. It's because we do that now with some products. We do it with Azure.
And it's very similar to that setup, I think.
And unfortunately, with Azure, not even Microsoft knows how much it's going to cost. Nobody at Microsoft can give you a estimate of how much it's going to cost because they don't know. There's too many. It's too much of black magic on their pricing for that kind of stuff. You can't just buy a VM to use for a month. You have to buy the VM, and then you buy the processor, and then you buy the network, and then you buy the network switch, and then you buy the firewall, and then you buy the hard drives, and then it's like, it's so a la carte. You're buying each French fry independently, and you don't know how much it's going to cost until you're done eating all your French fries for the month. And then you get this bill that says, hey, you had 406 French fries, and these 10 French fries cost this much, and these 90 French fries cost this much.
That's exactly it. I'm not sure the French fry analogy is a great analogy, but the idea that 10 French fries cost more than those 50 French fries is definitely the point.
Right.
And again, because I like to bring things full circle, I'm sitting here doing hula hoops. Back to AU, the last session I did during AU was one on Forge called Forge for Project Data Analytics, Case Study of the Data Management API. And that was delivered by, and I'm going to get this right, Tade Hakupian. And I know I got that right because he phonetically spelt his name because he's a genius.
He is a genius.
But it was a great.
I could probably say it right.
When they spell it out phonetically, it makes it easy. And the idea behind the session was just exactly that. At his firm, they developed this Forge-based platform to do some data analytics, and he walks through the whole thing. He spent some time at the Forge equivalent to the gunslinger events. I can't remember what they're called, but the same idea. You spend a week, you submit a idea for a Forge application you want to build, and then basically you get a week, virtually or not these days, the virtual, with the Forge team, and they help you go through the process of building your Forge app. Like you actually have to submit an application with what you want to build. It's not just hey, here's a demo. It's an actual work in progress type of session. And he goes through that entire thing on his class. It's a really good class for people interested in Forge, but maybe haven't taken a leap yet. And there was a lot of questions. He addresses it, some of it in the session, but more so in the chat. Which also, if you want to get the full meal deal, you can do the Autodesk on demand or the AU on demand till the end of the month. After that, I'm not sure what they're going to do if they migrate to YouTube or to the Autodesk Online platform, but the chat will disappear. So if you want to see the chat, you have to do it on the new swap card platform they have out now. So definitely recommend logging in and checking out that session.
Interesting. I did like the technology. I like the technology they used this year at AU, except for one thing. See, you can't please everybody. When you went, or at least when I went to a session, and I got there early because, as you do, you get there because you want to get a good seat, right? So you get there early, and the video doesn't automatically start. So you're sitting there at the web browser open to the session, and then you look down, it's like 5 minutes later, it's like, oh crap, I forgot to hit the play button on the stupid video.
That was weird because it automatically shut off. The demo sessions that I was part of, at the 30 minutes, it's a hard stop. Boom.
Right.
The system shuts down and you're out.
Right.
Yeah, there's not even like a warning of any kind. It's just
right. It was like, boom,
very
done.
abrupt.
Yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, but other than that, I thought it worked out well.
I think the other thing that I saw some complaints about, valid, I guess, was because it was online, as we all do. You sign up for a webinar, you're not going to make it because you're in a different time zone or you're having a work meeting, and just catch the video. Well, the problem is that some of the classes were limited, and people didn't show up. There's, one example was 70 seats were available but taken. There's no mechanism to let people in after that started, like at 2 a.m.
And that doesn't make sense. Yeah, especially when they're not charging for it.
Well, and I think maybe that's part of the reason to protect the IP. But some of the big sessions, like Marcelo's session, when he was doing it live Q&A, there was over 1,700 people in his session. So it wasn't a bandwidth issue.
No.
Why are some 95 people and some are 1,700?
And they could have had like what RTC did in the labs. They had two classes. They had one where you got a computer and one where you sat in the back and either used your own or just watched.
Yep.
They could have done the same thing. Oh, I didn't make it in the first 70. I don't get to ask a question.
Yep.
Real time.
Well, in all honesty, I hope these questions are not answered because I would like next year to be live, not another virtual session.
I don't know what they're going to do. If they're going to do, I think they're going to try to do a hybrid.
I think that
going live and not, and I think it's going to be rough the first year.
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know how that's going to work, and unless but then, I thought and then answered myself. That didn't help you, did it? Like this year, you could tell they were recorded. They weren't live because they didn't make very many mistakes, and it started and ended on time. I hope they don't make the poor instructors do the recording beforehand and then have to represent it live.
No, I think they actually had to record it like 2 months before or something crazy, right?
But if they had it if they had AU in person again, or the hybrid model, I hope they don't make
I
the
see.
instructors record it a month beforehand for the studio audience or
And I
the
guess they
online
would just
audience.
play the recording and have the presenter stand there awkwardly watching it.
Yeah, that's not any good. That defeats the purpose.
Right. But then you have the Q&A after.
You still have the Q&A now.
So then do you just completely remove the idea of the recording and just record the live session at the moment?
I think that's what you'd have to do. And
Yeah,
then
and just go back
and
to the
then
way
if
it
you
used to
didn't
be.
go, then you'd have to wait a couple days to see all the sessions. They just do screen recordings and audio.
Yeah, and I think they would have to do that because if they do the hybrid, there's going to be lots of people or a lot of companies that are going to say, well, I'm not going to pay the $2,500 to send you there. You can just log in and do it, watch it on the computer.
Right. Or they have certain sessions like they did in the past. You had certain sessions that you could watch live. There was like one or two rooms. One room, I think it was one room in each vertical. Not vertical, but industry that had a room. Maybe they'll do that again. That seemed to
And
work.
that makes sense. And the other thing about having the people come to the event is the sponsors, again, giving a 10-minute sponsored demo
Mm-hmm.
to people asking questions in a chat, not worth the same value as meeting people face to face, having a beverage. So that the live event needs to be there for the sponsors as well.
Right. Well, the value to the live event is the value that we talked about earlier. Yeah, let's do a webinar. Okay, great. I signed up. I have all intentions of going to the webinar. 2 minutes before the webinar, oh crap, I got to do this instead. I'll catch the recording, and you never go back and catch a recording.
It would have been nice if they, like Carl was saying, if 5 minutes after the session started, if the capacity wasn't met, that they just removed the ability of like only those people who registered being able to get in. Like
Right.
maybe 5 or 10 minutes in, it would open the join button up again.
Yeah. Yeah, because
kind
that's
of like
a
they do
disservice
it
to
when they're live, right? You just kind of wait outside of the classroom. If the class isn't full, they let you in.
Right. Or you just walk in anyway.
Right.
Not everybody's a rebel like you, Bill.
Well, yeah. Or Marcelo. He walks around every.
He's the master. I think he takes in 10 sessions for each session.
He's a session grazer.
Yeah, he is.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
But you know
like
what?
that,
It works for him.
Yep.
He goes in, he sees a little bit of each thing, and now he's understand what he wants to go learn. I think it's great. Wish I could do that. Yeah, but the advantage to me to going in live and spending the money is you're there, you go watch a session. Even if there aren't any good sessions during your time, you still go and watch one because you're there. You're away from work.
And that's the other key. That the being away from work does allow you to decompress and sort of try not to focus. I know it doesn't always work that way, but way more than sitting at your desk when the email comes in or the phone rings or you just don't even get into the session. So.
Well, you're truly devoting your time, right? Like it's on your calendar. I'm away for 3 days. Don't schedule me. Don't, you're busy.
Mm-hmm.
When you're sitting in front of your computer at home or at your desk watching a conference, I wonder if people are probably like, what is she doing? What is she watching?
Mm-hmm.
It gets a lot harder. And not only that, it is much harder to focus because you don't have the level of engagement. It's just not there.
And you don't have the other people asking questions. You don't get the excitement of when half of the room goes, wow, on a feature that you didn't think was really that wow worthy. But then you think about it some more and go, yeah, that is a neat thing. Glad I learned that. Well, next year.
Well, let's say for whatever reason it can't be hybrid next year. I'm hoping it is. How can they make a virtual experience better?
Watch parties. We should do that. Let's plan on that. If AU is virtual next year, let's figure out how to do watch parties, and we'll pick like 2 or 3 sessions, and we'll do a Zoom watch party.
I think that sounds good.
A legit watch party or a Mystery Science Theater 3000 watch party?
A legit watch party.
And so essentially only one person would really need to register because you're just broadcasting it
Right.
through that one.
But if it's free, what does it matter?
Yes. Well, now, Dana, you know that's not the way that it works.
I don't want to get in trouble with the AU gods.
Did you get in trouble with the AU guys?
The AU, the IP, and the private. The privacy of the users means that it can't be broadcast.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we tried to, for those of you who may have seen it on LinkedIn or Twitter, for the Shinamo meetup, we tried to live stream it on YouTube as well.
Oh.
And that was quickly shot down.
Yeah, that would be shut down. So we will have to figure out. I will figure out how to do it legally with the AU gods.
There we go.
So if it's virtual next year, I will reach out to my contacts at AU and see if we could how we can do a watch party.
So I already know the answer. It just came to me in a dream.
Okay.
But no, I wasn't dreaming.
Did it hurt?
Daydreaming.
Similar to the Chinamo event, they allow people to create meetups. So instead of a watch party, we have a meetup.
A virtual meetup.
A virtual meetup.
Yeah, we can do the same. We could do that with Zoom. I don't see why we couldn't. I'll have to ask them. But we're not broadcasting it on YouTube. We're inviting people to the Zoom call. It's only the people who invited. And then at the start, we say, hey, make sure you're registered to AU. If you're not registered to AU, please register and register for the class.
There you go. And if nothing else, we'll just have it live. Maybe this whole conversation will make Autodesk think that, you know what, there's some people doing some sneaky things, going to have some watch parties. We better just go back to Vegas and do it live.
We better just do it live.
Yeah.
Or maybe we just find a central location that's,
like Las Vegas.
Or like Chicago, for Carl's sake. Yeah. And do a live watch party.
Yeah.
Safely, masked. If permitting.
Weather
permitting. Depending on the state of the world.
I think AU will be live again next year. I think RTC will be too.
You think it's going to be in Texas?
Or Florida.
Or Florida?
Yeah.
No mask or vaccination mandates.
Right.
They're starting. I'm heading to London at the end of November.
Yeah.
For a live event, so we can do it in the UK.
Conferences are starting to come back here in Vegas.
Still wearing a mask and making sure you have your vaccines and all that stuff. But yeah, it's slowly coming back around.
Yeah, it'll be back sooner than we think. We're gonna just forge ahead.
Forge ahead, we must.